The time is upon us, the moment is at hand. The second reset for the Sunwell Plateau has just passed, and that means it is raid review time once again. Has the Sunwell truly proven to be the most difficult classic raid of all time, or will pre-nerf tier 5 or even next Rammus prove out to be more challenging when it comes to truly breaking down the numbers? First of all, the mandatory explanations of the information I will be going over. This is something I started doing in Classic, where after the second reset of a new raid, I take a look at the Warcraft log data to try and determine how difficult has the raid been. We do this through looking at how many average attempts people take per kill of a boss, how many wipes have been caused, as well as what percentage of players who have cleared at least one boss have gone on to clear the entire instance. Through the video, I'll be referring to progression kills. This means your first kill as part of a majority guild group, as well as regular kills or defeats, which is just the number of times the boss has been logged as defeated overall across all raids, guild or otherwise. This is why progression kills will always seem like a much smaller number. Finally, the benchmark for the hardest content so far is interestingly neck and neck between Nax 40 and pre-nerf tier 5, as by the end of the second reset, both of these raids only saw a 19% completion rate overall. Anyways, for such a short raid, I've so much to say about the final tier of TBC Classic, so let's begin. Galagos, the opening boss of the Sunwell, has proven so much more of a gatekeeper than those we anticipated being just that in Classic, like Veilstraz or Skerim, and there isn't really any way, as far as I know, that I can pull stats of guilds who have progressed on Galagos over the first two resets without yet landing a kill, but I bet I'm filtering quite a few guilds by default in presenting the information this way. Just over 13,000 progression kills were logged, with about 66,000 total defeats and an average pull count of 7. Galagos was the cause of some 380,000 wipes. As far as a first boss goes, I think this is a clear indicator of what Sunwell Plateau holds in store, and from the start it gets your raid doing two things which will become more and more important the deeper you progress in here. Number 1, communication, and number 2, very high raid-wide healing requirements. The dual phase aspect is simple enough and can largely be sorted in advance, but it's easy to mess up when you're getting close to the enrages. And as with every Sunwell encounter, the raid damage is high, though the bosses themselves don't have a massive amount of health. If you keep talking about the health values between the people in the Shadow Realm and those not, rotating people into the portals and stay cool, the dragon should go down and open the pathway to a rather more challenging encounter, Brutalis. In short, he was a DPS check fight back then, and these days it still is a fight that checks your raid, but nowadays much more so the healers and the tanks. This boss cannot parry haste or crush your tank, but as a trade-off his melee damage is insanely high, with a single cancel cast being the difference between a dead or an alive tank. Brutalis saw 11,490 progression kills with about 54,000 defeats total, and an average pull count of 12. Brutalis sent millions upon millions of players back to the graveyard with an impressive wipes cause tally of 585,599. Yes, that's over 500,000 wipes on the second boss of the instance. My impressions of this fight from a DPS point of view, I'm gonna be honest, it's hard to appreciate the difficulty aspect firsthand, but seeing those tank health bars ping pong from, yeah, they look good, to holy crap, is this guy about to die, is kind of scary to see. It's a fight which makes your healers have to adapt to the playstyle it demands. You don't down rank as much, you don't cancel cast as much just because somebody's full health, you insta mana pot as soon as possible when your mana drops enough to benefit from it. Yeah, some of those are good habits anyway, but fights before this haven't really needed you to do it at all. Much like Galagos, communication is key here. Your tanks need to be loaded up on hots and have an armor buff running when they press that taunt button, or you shouldn't be too surprised when they get sent to the graveyard before you can get it cast off. Overall though, I'd say the wipe count on this boss reflects the difficulty that he presents, but if you can get him down, you can definitely get the next two down, no problem. The next boss is in the same arena. The remains of the fallen blue dragon Madragosa reanimate when the corrupted blood of the fallen pitlord Brutalis meet to create the skeletal dragon Felmist. She saw 9,936 progression kills over the first two resets with about 40,000 defeats total and an average pull count of 8. She was the cause of 289 29,919 wipes. Yes, that's less than either Galagos or Brutalis. I feel this is a boss where you can legitimately lose half your raid at some point or have a bad pull and still be able to turn it into a scrappy kill. Her dangerous mechanics again can usually be worked out in advance. Encapsulate, which is usually cast one time per ground phase, is an extremely dangerous pulsing AoE that needs your raid to be pre-split, but you can outrun it if you're quick and you use a health stone. Gas Nova drains a huge amount of your mana and health per second, but it can be dealt with super fast by Priest Master Spell. In fact, Priests overall are really your hard carries on this fight, both the healers and Shadow. Her rare phases, well, I don't know about you guys, but when we did this, it seemed really unclear whether she was going to breath the middle zone or the south, so we ended up just sitting north because the tell for that felt so much clearer to read. And when if this breath hits you, you get permanently mind controlled and have to be killed, so it's not ideal. Our first Fel Mist ended up being what I believe you call a clean kill, guys. Good job. Either way, once you sort the mechanics out, this fight really isn't so bad. Pass the gauntlet on to the next encounter then, the Eredar Twins. Over the first two resets they had 8,747 progression kills with about 34,000 defeats total. They took an average pull count of 11 and the twins were the cause of 348,000 wipes. Again, that's less than Galagos, and I think they have less wipes than him for a reason. This could just be a DPS player take, but twins honestly feel like the easiest boss in the instance. Yes, I know the raid damage is really high, and if that one guy coasting by gets conflag, he's gonna wipe you, but the difficult bit of the encounter is super front loaded. The hard part lasts about a minute and a half or so, thereabouts. After the first twin goes down, as long as you aren't missing over half your raid, you can probably push it to a kill. All of the dangerous mechanics just stop happening, and your healers during the first part of the fight can full on pump heals with heroism up and actually be seeing value out of that. I think this is one of those bosses where you're gonna wipe again and again super fast while you learn the mechanics early, but once things start to fall into place, I bet it will become one of your most consistent bosses in Sunwell Plateau. The next boss, however, will be a little more problematic. Muru back in original TBC was seen as a wall of an encounter, the boss that forced players to min-max, and in 2022 it's proven to be the most challenging encounter Classic has ever seen. Muru has a total of 5,169 progression kills and about 18,500 kills total, with an average pull count of 33. The big stat from this boss is that Muru has caused an insane 606,000 wipes over a 2-week period globally. So I ended up being in our guild's second Muru kill, though I watched plenty of the early progression, and whilst DPS is much higher these days, this boss is just incredibly unforgiving and fast paced. It's a two-part fight. Phase 1 is getting the boss's health to 0 while dealing with adds, and then phase 2 is a DPS race. The DPS required to keep the adds under control is already high between the humanoid and the void sentinels. At the same time, the AoE damage you need is high, the single target you need is high for the boss, and the tanks are taking a beating at the same time. This is a fight where, as you can see from the DPS here and any other Muru kills you will look at, AoE is incredibly important to stay on top of the adds before the next set spawns. Timing is absolutely essential to ensure that you're going to transition to phase 2, the burn phase, with no adds coming up. Messing this up, especially on progression, is more or less going to be a wipe for you. Entropius gradually deals more and more raid-wide damage, meaning the boss has to die before you do. It's both super high on DPS and healing requirements, and I'd be surprised if your raid is living too much longer than the 130 mark. As you can see here, this was another clean kill in inverted commas, but hey, a kill is a kill. Finally, the end boss of the Burning Crusade, Kiljaeden. I know, back in 2007 everyone must have thought it was Illidan, but nope, they still had this raid to do. He saw 3,663 progression kills with 12,000 defeats total and an average pull count of 20. Kiljaeden caused 227,000 wipes, the least in the instance, funnily enough. Muru's keeping too many guilds busy, I guess. If I was to sum up this encounter, Kiljaeden doesn't feel like a classic fight. He doesn't feel like a TBC fight. This is genuinely the first boss encounter in Classic ever that feels like a modern fight. It's kind of hard to explain why, but I'll give it a go. The level of optimization each and every raid member can do is massive, and there's things happening on each pull which shouldn't need to be called out by your raid leader, but good raiders will just just do and capitalize on. Here's what I mean. I'm playing a Rep Pally on these fight, and I can do all of these different things. I can melee the shield orbs when they spawn. I can freedom the tanks on hunter reflections to stop them getting rooted. I can freedom somebody if they're late to the shield with flame spike. I can make sure I'm in position to stack for breath when it's needed, and so many more things. The only thing that isn't good on this fight is having to stare upwards for shadow spike or orbs. Seriously, a mechanic where you have to put your camera up like that is just kind of annoying. If I was playing a range, this would probably be a larger complaint for me as well. So there are the bosses. There's only 6 of them. I had a bunch to say about them, but was it statistically harder than pre-nerf tier 5 or Nax Ramus? Well, I'll just tell you the numbers, because I'd say the Sunwell has been the most difficult raid so far. So what I mean here is 19% of guilds that cleared at least one boss in Nax 40 or tier 5 went on to clear by the end of the second reset. 28% of guilds that beat Galagos also defeated Kiljaeden within a 2-week period. So that's actually a 9% higher clear rate on the Sunwell than these other 2 instances. Also, there are more progression kills on the end bosses than tier 5 as well. Kael'thas had about 2,600 kills, and Lady Vash had just under 2,100. Kiljaeden has over 3,600 progression kills. I guess that's what you get when you have a short 6-boss linear raid compared to tier 5 with its 2 raids and 10 bosses total. So was Sunwell Plateau easier? No, I wouldn't go as far to say that. Within 2 weeks of release, Sunwell Plateau has caused nearly 2.5 million wipes in total. Pre-nerf tier 5 as a comparison had just over 400,000. I think the barrier of entry of Hydros or Alar compared to Galagos is not a very good one to make. One of these is a whole lot more difficult than the other 2, and as I started with, I bet a lot of guilds aren't even 1 out of 6 in the Sunwell, more than you would imagine, like a whole lot more. In fact, the Sunwell has caused more wipes than all of the rest of the TBC bosses combined if we're talking about the first 2 resets. This place, for Classic, is kind of hard actually. Why are there so many wipes then? Well, challenging bosses, high healing requirements, lots of instant wipe mechanics, lots of communication needed. Your entire raid gets put to the test on more or less every single boss. Take your pick of any of the above. Oh, and this is super important actually. If you wipe, the run back is really short. The only bosses that kind of suck to get back to are Galagos and Twins, and even then neither of those has anything on the marathon you had to do to get back to Kael'thas or Lady Vash. People get in there fast, they wipe fast because mechanics are hard, and then they go again fast. It's no wonder the wipe count is so incredibly high. So overall, while Sunwell Plateau has seen more clears than tier 5 content did or Nax Ramus did, with the wipe count that's over 6 times higher, I don't think I have any problem saying that Sunwell Plateau in our classic journey so far has proven to be the most challenging raid content yet. And I thought only Ulduar would be harder than pre-nerf tier 5. Can't wait to break down the stats on Zero Lights by the end of week 2. That should be interesting. That's it though. Let me know your thoughts on the stats, how your progression's going in there, and enjoy it before it gets nerfed, because it will sooner rather than later. As always guys, thank you all so much for watching and listening in. I shall see you all in the next one very soon.